Greetings and salutations. It's the old man down the street. This morning I woke up, it was I think 65 degrees, and it was a gorgeous morning. I was going to go for a walk. All of a sudden the wind picked up, the temperature dropped, and now we've got 2 inches of snow on the ground. I don't know what's the temperature. Temperature's 40, so I don't think it's going to last, but this is kind of unusual weather. Last Monday I went out to Goochland County Administrative Building. I was invited up by Dr. Raley for a discussion about some of the questions that I'd posed to him. And he invited me up to the behind the locked doors of the 3rd floor suite where all the secret discussions and NDA stuff is cared for. And we spent over 30 minutes, probably almost 40 minutes talking. It was a good discussion. We talked about lots of subjects, for instance, NDAs, tax rates for real estate, the Tuckahoe Creek Service District tax, the bond issue from 2021. And that bond, by the way, was passed with an 85% approval rate, which is pretty darn high. Thanks in good part to a lot of the citizens who supported it because they believed they were going to get the things that were listed in the bonds. They didn't know that they might not get it. And we talked about the high power transmission lines. And we talked mostly about proffers. So I'm going to go over some of that just for a few minutes. And I'll be coming back to it later on over the next few days. Each individual subject has its own people who are interested in some things and not so much interested in others. We talked about NDAs, and I told him that in my opinion, and I'm not representing anybody, but I'm a citizen of the county, and I believe that NDAs should be narrowly written so that it protects the interests of the citizens and the county administrators. And apparently these are not narrowly written. They are there to protect, as I said before, the data center people and tract. They're not there for us. Otherwise we would know all about this stuff and we'd be able to debate the issues and talk about things, but these are not built for us. I inferred from his discussion, because he said he really can't discuss anything. Oh, there's a surprise. His discussion was that I'm not sure they had any guidelines or led me to believe that I'm not sure they have any guidelines on when an NDA is appropriate and what's appropriate to be in an NDA to protect the citizens, not the data centers. And so he talked that there's going to be guidelines come out, some sort of standard operating procedures. He said also, and what he was happy to tell me that there was a new tax rate coming out specifically for data centers. It wasn't it hasn't been approved yet because I don't think it's going to go to the Board of Supervisors until the proper point in the budget process, which is not for some time. But it raises the taxes, not the sales tax, but the property tax for data centers from I don't remember what it was, $3 per 100 to $40 per 100. That's a good deal. He was happy with that. And I guess from a county administrator standpoint, from those that live in the center of the county, that's a good deal. But for me, it's like, what's the difference between being shot in the head with a silver bullet, the $40 bullet, or the $3 bullet? You're still getting shot in the head. The data centers are unhealthy. They're bad for us. In so many ways, it doesn't make any difference how much taxes they bring in because they're not going to help us that live next to them. It doesn't make any difference. Anyway, we talked about the TCSD. TCSD would be paid down Like that's a high priority. I think it's a high priority because also Goochland County is paying some percentage out of their general, tax fund. So they want to get rid of that, so that lowers that inner circle tax rates. We talked about the bond. A lot of effort by citizens here on the east side in 2021 because that's where the people growth, the population growth was in 2021. It's when I moved here, and people voted for the bond, and in the bond there was promises of a Goochland Elementary School, a career and technical education center, and build out emergency services, including 2 fire stations, Fire Station 7 and Fire Station 8. The 2 fire stations, as well as other EMS equipment, because as you grow people and infrastructure, you need to grow the infrastructure, right? And we talked about the high power lines. And I'm going to put a website for the people who are being most active right now, and those people are our neighbors over in Orange County, or Orange County, Virginia. And they're being very active because they've got a lot of wires that go through their county, but we've got them coming through Goochland County too. And it's going to be pretty crazy. I just can't imagine. It's like Agent Orange days. They're going to put, I think it's 200 feet either side of the transmission line. It's going to be deforested. It reminds me of Vietnam. And we talked about proffers. Matter of fact, much of the discussion was about proffers. And my impression was, when I got the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, data from several people that had asked for it over the last few months, and it was quite puzzling. I mean, I had receipts from Lowe's and Home Depot and all sorts of things for expenditures. And I had a couple spreadsheets for balances. But I didn't have, I couldn't track the in to the out. But let me back up for a second. Exactly what is a proffer? A proffer is a gift, a donation, if you will, from a developer to the county. And that gift is supposed to fund things, and the county decides what it is. It's typically roads, schools, libraries, emergency services, those kinds of things. There's 5 categories, sometimes 4. And if somebody builds a house, they have an algorithm that said, typically a single family home requires X amount of roads, X amount of libraries, X amount of schools, et cetera. And so they set aside that when it's time to build the road, build the school, build the fire station. Then they go into the proffer fund and they take it out. And the proffer funds last for 12 years. If the money that's brought in isn't spent in 12 years, the county is obligated to send it back to the developer who gave it to them. So it's money that has to be spent in 12 years. So where is all that money? Well, it's in bank accounts, and they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that. They can, if they're not using it right away, because you pile up requirements until it's time to build something. And so they're allowed to put it in a bank. But when they do that, they also have to sort of track it and report that amount to the state. With the reports I had from the FOIA, And the reports that Goochland had sent to the state, there was a considerable discrepancy, and I just used 1 year, 2024. I'm not a budget guy, I'm not a finance guy, I'm not a numbers guy at all. But what I saw going in should have been the same reported to the state. It's not. Dr. Raley admitted that the county is way behind in their ability to account for that, because right now it's all paper. So they've got 3-ring notebooks of proffers. So let me go back again. What's a proffer? When I bought my house, the developer, that's Eagle, Markel Eagle, had to pay the county about $10,000 as soon as the county got or issued a certificate of occupancy. So they finished the house, they called the county, the inspector came out, and I tell you what, the county administrator's got a great staff for all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just, they're really efficient. Watching them work is really good. But I digress. So the inspector comes out, walks around, makes sure that it can be occupied, signs it off, and Eagle writes a check, sends it to the county. And the county records it, said, we got a check from Eagle. It was for $10,000 for property XYZ. And they deposit the check in this bank account. They record it somewhere, probably on a big green piece of paper, with lots of columns and very skinny lines, and put it in a 3-ring notebook. And then at some point, they tried to collate all that stuff into a spreadsheet or an accounting program, I don't know. But right now, with the information that supposedly we got when we, the public, got when we asked for data on proffers, it's a jumble, it's a mess. Dr. Raley says they're working diligently to try to automate this stuff, because we need to know when the dollar comes in that's being targeted at supporting the infrastructure of District 4, that it's going to District 4. It used to, a few years ago, proffers could go to any place in the county. So if, for instance, they needed a road out in District 1 and they didn't have money for it, they could use District 4 proffers. That's not legal anymore. But of course, I'm not sure how they know that if they don't have a system that accounts for the one-to-one. So I think they're working on that. The other thing is they've never included inflation. So what they picked for a proffer many years ago has stayed the same, even though the cost of housing has gone up. The cost of the curbs and gutters, that's what I call infrastructure. Cost of curbs and gutters has gone up, but the proffers have stayed the same. So they're starting to adjust for that now. So that, I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of issues with proffers, and I'm going to come back to those, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time today. I just wanted to give you a brief idea. The meeting was a good one. It was a long one. I surfaced some of the issues and questions that I've heard from talking to people. I've sent those questions and my position to my supervisor, Charlie Waters. I haven't heard back. And so I know that Dr. Raley is not my representative, that Charlie Waters is, but I appreciated the ability to at least talk to the executive branch of Goochland County. I think that they're trying to get everything on track, not tracked, on track, and that's going to help. because there's some things that don't make sense. We here in the East have been promised or been contributing with our proffers for parks, and we don't have any. There's some talk that the land down, I don't remember how many acres it is, down on Hockett Road that the county owns might be a park someday. It's right across the street from the data center, so we'll see how that works out. They decided some time ago not to put a school here. So the kids that live in my neighborhood ride a bus 45 minutes to an hour. They decided to do that because many of the kids didn't want to do that when they lived in the southeast part of the county, and so they started going to a private school. And so I don't think that's a reason to not build a school, but I'm not on the school board. The other thing is a fire station. We were promised on the bond that we'd have a fire station number 7 down here in Hockett. They had all the resources lined up to start that, and they decided that they wanted to look, there was some indecision about where to put the fire station on 7. And so they decided to delay it, and they put it on 8. But instead of starting 7 right away, they postponed it, even though, I don't remember what the bond was. They got $46 million left on the bond. They have to spend the money by 2029 or execute the bond spending by 2029. So hopefully they'll do that. If they don't, of course, we won't have a fire station here. Dr. Raley said that they were doing architectural and engineering drawings, he hoped, for this coming fiscal year, which means they're not actually going to start the fire station on Hockett Road until 2028. And I don't know whether they have to use all the money by the time the bond expires. I don't know. I don't know the rules for that. But kicking that can down the road could be very expensive. Plus, it puts us out here in the East at incredible risk, incredible risk. Now they're putting Eli Lilly in, and with 600 employees or whatever. So the bottom line is, it was a good meeting with Dr. Raley. We discussed a lot of the issues. There were no issues that were resolved. We have to come back to NDAs. We have to come back to taxes. We have to come back to the bond issue, which is building the fire station number 7. Plus, we need an EMS communication tower in the northeast quadrant of the county because first responders don't have walkie-talkie communication with other units. Incredible that we don't have that. High-power transmission lines, I'm going to give you a link to the Orange County efforts so you can kind of get an idea what they're doing. They're being very active. Dr. Raley did say there's nothing the Board of Supervisors can do about it. It's a state issue and a FERC issue, Federal Electric something, FERC, FERC.gov. You can make comments. I'll put a link on the website or on the video. And proffers. We talked about proffers, but you know, right now we've got, I think, $8 million in the bank. I don't know what we're spending on it. There's a capital improvement program, and there's also something called a capital. It's essentially, it affects the algorithm of if you build a house, that means there's so many people and so many curbs and gutters. So we discussed a lot of issues. We turned over a lot. I've turned over a lot of rocks. I've got a lot more questions. It was helpful for me. And I appreciate his time. I appreciate the time of everyone in the county. Well, thanks for watching. Stay tuned.